Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 31, Dig Those Diglett. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on their way to Fuchsia City, the city that holds the 6th gem in Ash's quest. Brock states that it should just be over the mountains, but panics as there's mountains all over the goddamn place, so they've officially lost their way, not sure which way to go. Meanwhile, Jesse and James were getting ready to have a picnic when an explosion is heard out of nowhere. Ash immediately buckles down and rushes with the gang to find out what the cause was, as Team Rocket annoyedly claim that all their food is now ruined thanks to the explosion, and also go chasing after it in wanting revenge for their goddamn food. Ash and the gang are able to locate the source of the loud sound first, being rocks falling off of nearby cliffs, and a whole bunch of cars on the road. These rocks then fall onto the cars, causing them all to crash and pile up, much to Ash and the gang's panic, as well as Team Rocket, who are also observing the scene. These rock avalanches were being caused by Digletts coming in and out of the ground, which Pikachu notices and tries to talk to, and with Meowth also observing. But the Diglett quickly burrows away, likely frightened. Ash and the gang then run up to one of the foremen from the crashed cars, who is very angry at the Diglett, who are now popping up in spades, leading Misty to spot them and comment on how cute they are. This pisses off the foreman, though, who states that the Diglett constantly coming up from the ground is making it impossible for them to build their dam there, which they were planning to do. Ash then looks up Diglett in his Pokedex, which mentions that you can recognize that a Diglett is moving underground if you see any upturned earth. Ash then rebuttals that since he couldn't see any upturned earth near the dam building site, which was covered in concrete, then the Diglett must not be a problem there, only wanting to burrow through dirt. But the foreman corrects him that they do in fact go through concrete, pointing to the multiple cracks in it. Wouldn't that be painful for the Diglett, though? Like, going through the ground is one thing, there are ground types after all, but going through concrete? Maybe we should have a steel type Dugtrio. I mean, I guess that's why Alolan Dugtrio was steel type, maybe. Anyways, the foreman then points out that the Diglett are a problem, not just for blocking where they want to build the dam, but for also destroying all their trucks and supplies due to causing the rock avalanches, and asserts that it's because of that they now are looking to hire any random trainer who would be willing to help fight off the Diglett. Even going as far as to offer a 7-day stay at the local resort as a reward, because they were so desperate, as the trainers that their company had actually hired to get rid of the Diglett had seemingly not shown up yet. Ash then volunteers that him and his friends could help get rid of the Diglett, with the foreman asking if they were the ones that were hired, with Ash confirming that they were not. But were confident that they could do a better job than whoever the company originally hired. As if on cue, some of the trainers that were originally hired show up, being Gary and his cheerleading squad. We finally see Gary again. It's not just Gary who was hired, though, as a whole bunch of other trainers trail behind him. Gary then spots Ash and comments on how Ash shouldn't be there, as only the best possible trainers were hired for this job, and Ash was the weakest fucking trainer he ever knew. So just typical original series Gary bullshit, but it's still enough to get Ash riled up. And he gets even more angry when Gary teases him to show him some of his Pokemon, as Gary believes that Ash could never have possibly caught any. But Ash gets ready to prove him wrong for once, but then Gary just laughs and is like, you know what, bro? I actually don't give a fuck about my Pokemon. What I do give a fuck about is my fan club. Basically confirming that he only viewed his Pokemon as a way to get extra fame and fortune, and that was his true goal. And should be the goal of any Pokemon trainer. Ash misunderstands this, somehow thinking that all of Gary's fan club members were his Pokemon. Brock obviously smacks Ash on the head for this, not wanting to be associated with Ash for a bit because he wanted to impress all of Gary's fangirls, which Gary confirms that's all they are to him, nothing more like a relationship or something, which is much to Brock's relief, as Brock tries to hit on all the girls, asking them to go on a date with him. Bro really thinks he can date 10 chicks at once. He doesn't have the riz for that, and Misty knows it as she looks on in shame. Surprisingly, though, the girls all agree to go on a date with him. What the fuck? What world are we in? First, they're basically cheating on Gary by doing this, as they were obsessed with him, and now Brock is actually getting chicks? What's going on? But the universe still hates Brock to some extent, as when Brock tries to get all their contact information, the foreman interrupts, instructing all the trainers to meet at a certain spot to discuss the matter of the Diglett. This leads Gary and his fan squad to leave away in their car as they drive to the spot, much to Brock's sadness as he didn't get their numbers. At least Brock's situation is likely enough to convince Ash that the fan club are in fact humans and not Pokemon, but this doesn't mean that Ash himself isn't depressed either, as he didn't get to show Gary his Pokemon and finally show him up overall. Meanwhile, Team Rocket heard the foreman's offer of a stay at a resort, and were instantly now interested in dealing with the Diglett so that they could earn some time at the resort. So they'd actually have a plan that doesn't involve Pikachu for once, no way. Ash and the gang, along with Gary and all the other trainers, arrive at the meeting for the Diglett, and Ash realizes how many trainers there really are, and begins to compare himself, letting Gary get into his head, talking himself down. The foreman hears Ash talk himself down because he's being such a mopey bitch, and orders Ash to stop talking and pay attention to what he was about to say, but this just leads Ash to get into his head even more, as he calls himself the loser from Pallet for getting yelled at so much, and being despised by so many people, including Gary and now seemingly the foreman. Brock then instructs Ash to quit getting in his head like a little bitch, reminding him that Gary was a loser, and that Ash could still catch up to him. And I mean, who knows? Anything is possible. Gary's clearly not invincible if all of his fan club members would go on a date with Brock of all people as opposed to Gary. Maybe that's why Brock was so quick to motivate Ash. But anyways, Team Rocket are not in the main crowd, and are instead spying as usual. Unfortunately, that's not the only usual way that they're returning to, as now, as opposed to just wanting to win some time at the spot, after seeing the rest of the trainers, they become motivated to try and steal all of their Pokemon. But this motivation quickly fades, as James calculates the odds of them being able to defeat all the trainers with just their coughing and Ekans, and the numbers are very, very bad. Meowth then suggests that they get the upper hand by having coughing and Ekans evolve, which Jesse and James agree to try, after not being able to come up with any better plans, as all the plans that they could come up with just involved a sneak attack, and that never seems to work for them. Meanwhile, back at the meeting, the foreman begins his speech on how bad the Diglett are, basically treating them as huge parasitic bug Pokemon that were unstoppable. But Gary gets pissed off at this, cockily stating how Diglett was nothing more than the mole Pokemon, and would lose to practically any other Pokemon it faced, even a Caterpie. The foreman disagrees with this, though, stating that in large numbers they could do a whole bunch of damage. As if on cue, the Diglets show up, and reaffirming their hatred for vehicles, come and take out some of the buses that the other trainers arrived on. Gary wasn't convinced by the foreman's warnings, though, and cockily sends out one of his Pokemon to deal with the Diglett instantly. But the Pokemon refuses to come out of its Pokeball, and is picked up by Diglett and returned to Gary. Gary thanks the Diglett for returning his Pokeball, but gets mad at his Pokemon for not coming out, and sends out who he claims is his strongest Pokemon. You know, it'd be funny if he sent out one of his cheerleaders. But no, he sends out his strongest Pokemon, but they don't come out either. Gary then tries throwing all the Pokeballs that he has, and he better have a lot, because Oak always hypes him up for having so much Pokemon. But none of his Pokemon come out of their Pokeballs. Eventually, the Pokeball pile goes absolutely massive, as all the other trainers try sending out their Pokemon as well, but they all fail to come out as well. Throughout this whole process, the Diglett continue to bring the thrown Pokeballs back to their trainers, leading Misty and Brock to comment on how although the Diglett were seemingly unstoppable, at least they were polite. Ash then tries to join the fray by sending out his Squirtle, but his Pikachu tries to get him not to, knowing the reason why the Pokemon didn't want to come out of the Pokeball. However, Ash still throws out his Pokeball anyway, and surprise surprise, Squirtle doesn't come out. Ash tries to question Pikachu on why the Pokemon didn't want to battle, but they get distracted by the foreman, who is trying through his own way to get rid of the Diglett by playing whack-a-mole and trying to hit him with a mallet. Gary states that this is obviously stupid, knowing that the Diglett were far too fast to be hit by the mallet. Ash questions Gary how he knows this for sure, with Gary confirming that he's spent so much time studying Pokemon, making fun of Ash for not doing so. With Gary knowing that it was basically impossible to stop the Diglett at this point, due to their speed, he decides to just pack it up and call it a day, likely because he doesn't want to ruin his reputation, so he leaves with his fan club, which pisses Ash off, because he thinks that someone who gives up as easily as Gary shouldn't have near the fame that he has, and it pisses Brock off, because all of Gary's fangirls are gone with him, and he still never got their numbers, despite not being rejected. Damn it, Brock, I actually feel bad for you this time. Despite Ash not wanting to give up, he eventually is forced to, as all the other trainers do, and Ash and the gang decide to go to the spa for the night to take their minds off of everything and relax. Though unfortunately they do have to pay for the spa, as they didn't win the free spot. Misty can't relax, as she's still concerned as to why the Pokemon wouldn't come out of their Pokeballs, which reminds Ash that Pikachu knew, so he asks him why, and Pikachu then proceeds to point to several Diglett in the distance, chasing after them, and motioning for Ash and the gang to do the same, which they do as they pass by the foreman, who is still trying to hit some Diglett with his mallet, which obviously isn't going to work, buddy, just give it up. Meanwhile, Team Rocket are researching through some Pokemon textbooks how a Pokemon can evolve, and discover that most Pokemon evolve through winning battles with experience. Pretty obvious shit. Since Jesse and James basically have no wins, they realize how much work it would take to actually evolve Ekans and Coughing, and begin to question if it was really worth it. I mean, they've known Ekans and Coughing for a long time, and evolution would just change who they were, and now they weren't sure that they wanted to go through with that. They begin crying, afraid that their Pokemon may change forever, and they would regret it. But ironically, their tears, like some fucking magic, causes them to evolve. Now, there's no method like this in the games, so I don't know why the anime staff decided to do this, but Team Rocket, especially Meowth, take it as a sign that it was time for Ekans and Coughing to evolve after all. Meanwhile, Pikachu leads Ash and the gang to Diglett and Dugtrio's home, where the dam was going to be built. That's right, Dugtrio was there too. Dugtrio is the evolved form of Diglett, and is helping them with planting a whole bunch of stuff, being the ones to dig into the land, while the Diglett were the ones who planted the flowers. Ash, Brock, and Misty watch this, with Ash looking up Dugtrio in its Pokedex, which confirms the theory that Brock and Misty had, which is that Diglett and Dugtrio were capable of plowing the ground and terraforming land all over Earth, including a whole bunch of forests, gardens, and mountain ranges all by themselves. The foreman then appears, realizing that the spot they were going to build the dam was the Diglett and Dugtrio's home, meaning that the construction of the dam would flood their area and displace all of the Pokemon that lived there. This leads Brock to claim that that must be the reason why none of the Pokemon wanted to come out of their Pokeballs, as they didn't want to put their fellow Pokemon in danger by fighting the Diglett and Doug trio. The foreman then decides that they shouldn't build the dam. Let's go. A character actually has significant character growth that isn't inconsistent. Awesome. But then Team Rocket show up and begin to do their motto with Meowth just telling them to shut the fuck up, because we've all heard their motto 1,000 times before, and they actually had something exciting to show this time, so they should focus on that. Ash begs that Team Rocket get their annoying asses out of there, stating that he was sure that whatever new thing Team Rocket had up their sleeve would still just ruin the mood anyway. Team Rocket rebut this, though, and decide to dress in these Japanese costumes as fireworks go off above. And this sets the stage for their grand reveal of their new Pokemon, Arbok and Weezing, the evolved forms of Ekans and Koffing. I get the use of the fireworks to celebrate the evolution and all, but what's the reasoning behind the new outfits, guys? Anyways, Jessie immediately sends her Arbok into attack, with Ash instructing Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, and also sending out his Charmander and Bulbasaur. Arbok successfully manages to dodge Pikachu's Thunderbolt, leading James to then follow up with Smog, which creates a smog of smoke around the area, so Weezing and Arbok can both take the opportunity to dive underground when no one is watching them, so that they can perform a sneak attack. While Arbok and Weezing are underground, though, some strange sounds begin to be heard from underground, leading Team Rocket to chant along with the sounds, assuming that they were related to Arbok and Weezing, and they wanted to try and mimic their Pokemon. But it's revealed that the sounds are actually coming from the Diglett and Doug trio, which were underground and currently digging. Diglett and Doug trio then appear up from underground, bringing Weezing and Arbok with them, as they're now bruised and battered from experiencing the digging firsthand on their bodies. The digging also causes a huge tsunami of dirt to come out of the ground and form, and it carries Team Rocket all the way to the dam and destroys it, sending Team Rocket into the debris. The foreman watches as this happens and is okay with the dam's destruction. Let's go, he kept his character development. Awesome. Ash and the gang are also watching this unfold, with Ash commenting how Team Rocket never seems to have any good luck whatsoever, and despite that, they never learn their lesson that they're never going to win in the end. Speaking of Team Rocket, when they eventually come to at the remains of the dam, they discover that the dam project is cancelled, much like the foreman said he was going to do, and this pisses them off, as it means that, 1, they've lost their opportunity to steal Pokemon, and 2, they won't get that free resort stay. Meanwhile, the next day, Ash, Brock, and Misty set off for Fuchsia City, the destination of Ash's 6th gym battle.